Lisa Yasko, who's a member of Ukraine's Parliament from Volodymyr Zelensky's party, Servant of the People, Sluha Narodu. Thank you, Lisa, for being with us here in the studio. It's a pleasure to have you here. Volodymyr Zelensky calling for a truce in the air and at sea. This is basically what Ukraine's been calling for from day one, isn't it? It's the same thing.
Definitely. You know, for me and for all of us, it is very hard to continue telling the same stories about our lives. And nothing globally has changed yet. So we need to continue arguing for very basic things. And of course, this is very concerning that it seems that all our efforts that we're spending on for advocacy, for explaining, very often for screaming the voice of what happens in Ukraine, it ends in sometimes in nowhere, sometimes in criticism, sometimes in some pragmatic conversations for economic deals, which is understandable. But of course, the world of today's global reality is very, very full of cynicism.
I must feel incredibly like that because this minerals deal that our correspondent has just been speaking about, that's been widely reported. In some ways, this must feel like almost like blackmail from the United States, that you have to do this, otherwise you won't get our help.
You know, I think I can afford speaking as a human, as Ukrainian, not only as a politician. Yes, unfortunately, it feels very much as a blackmailing. And for ordinary Ukrainians, we don't understand why it goes this way, why everything that we are spending, like all our lives, giving away our lives every day, why the conversation on the justice, on what do we do with the aggressor is actually not fully happening, why we're talking about the mineral deals. But my role as a politician actually is to explain that the minerals deal is very important because it includes actually also certain funds and activities for the future economic interests that hopefully will be secured also by security efforts. And this is very important for Ukraine reconstruction, because if we don't secure that, that's going to be very hard to recover.
Because it's one point trying to reconstruct, but if you're reconstructing just for Russia to keep attacking and knock things down, I mean, clearly there's no progress to be made.
Yeah, but I don't think Donald Trump would want that. I think in his image of the future, he wants to have the minerals deal that there'll be his American interest in, maybe some other interests, and that the Russia will not be attacking. And taking into account his very pragmatic approach on so many things, I actually am very, very surprised why he's so naive, because Putin can break any kind of ceasefire where he wants. I think that Trump doesn't fully understand that.
So the Minsk agreement in 2014, 2015, the second Minsk agreement, Putin breaking that accord, seizing Crimea, then of course launching the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Examples that Putin can't be trusted.
Definitely. And Trump wants to show that he's a great big man who can solve big things and everything will go to American people. But it feels like he's so much concentrated on that he forgets about the bigger picture. And we see that the temperature of the conversations with Ukraine, with Europe, with Canada, with other states is going so high. I'm not sure whether it's helpful, this kind of approach. But in the same time, switching to Europe, I think this is what brings us strength at this moment, because our approach is much more confident, more peaceful, with more wisdom. Sometimes it lacks leadership, but we're going to talk about it, hopefully, in the next minutes. I think this is the moment when the leadership is coming.
Let's have a quick listen to what Ursula von der Leyen has in store, or the plan that she's unveiled just today to help Europe to rearm. Then more from Lisa after this.
In a drastic response to Washington suspending aid to Ukraine, Ursula von der Leyen laid out her vision of how the EU could become a defence powerhouse.
Europe is ready to assume its responsibilities. Rearm Europe could mobilize close to 800 billion euros of defence expenditures for a safe and resilient Europe.
The proposal would be mostly funded by member states' own budgets. Using the so-called national escape clause, defence spending would be exempt from the bloc's budgetary rules, so that member states may spend on defence without fearing punishing proceedings if their deficit exceeds 3% of GDP.
So if member states would increase their defence spending by 1.5% of GDP on average, this could create fiscal space of close to 650 billion euros over a period of 4 years.
To make up the target 800 billion euros, the European Commission President also proposed a new loan instrument, a 150 billion euro fund that member states could borrow from to build up their arsenals of artillery and air defence, including to be sent to Ukraine. Under the proposals, the EU's so-called cohesion funds, money allocated for levelling up standards of living in deprived regions of Europe, could be repurposed for defence spending. Finally, von der Leyen is eyeing private funds. Further billions she hopes to mobilise through a savings union and the European Investment Bank. European leaders will discuss these and other proposals on Thursday at an extraordinary meeting of the European Council, focused on defence and the war in Ukraine.
Lisa Yasko is still with us, member of Ukraine's Parliament, of the Servant of the People, Sluga Narodu Party of Volodymyr Zelensky. Thanks for being with us. You were talking about the importance of leadership. Tell us what you mean.
You know, I've been into Parliament already 6 years, and I always say that I belong to a generation of independent Ukrainians who always were fighting for freedom, for democracy, for leadership. And this goes together with our genetics, you know, that we demand actions. We actually are that drive that is making changes. But that was something that I was always lacking in Europe, in the western part of Europe, because life is very often very stable and there is no need for very drastic actions. And I've been advocating since I became a politician 6 years ago so much for, you know, strengthening and reinforcing security in Europe, for leadership, for understanding that security risks are very, very big. And it feels like only recently, finally, I don't need to explain that anymore. And what we hear from Ursula von der Leyen, from Kaja Kallas, from President Macron and other European leaders, that they are ready to invest in security, in defense on the European continent, and they believe and they know that Ukraine is a part of that. And for me, this is exactly what I always wanted to show, that Ukraine has so much strong experiences now in defense.
And you speak from the heart because, you know, not only are you a politician, but your family is beneath the bombs falling down on Ukraine.
Definitely.
Your family suffers.
I'm speaking as a mother, I'm speaking as a human, but also as a politician who really wants Europe to be strong. I'm also dealing a lot with human rights, and international organizations many of them are in crises. They also need that leadership. They need new philosophy, what Europe is. How should Europe look like? And it looks like if NATO is going to part of that, that's one conversation. If NATO is not going to step in fully, partially, then it will be a completely other security alliance. And that's not bad, but that actually shows the real leadership that Europe needs to make for the future, because our societies are undermined a lot by so much of polarization and hatred, different political movements that are often financed from Russia. We call it freedom, but we actually are not protecting our real freedom, because you need to be very careful and to know what kind of Europe you want to have in 1 year's time, in 2 years' time, and you need to invest in that.
Lisa Yasko, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on France 24. We appreciate your time. I hope your family stays safe and you continue to stay safe too when you go back to Ukraine. Lisa Yasko from Volodymyr Zelensky's party, Servant of the People, Sluga Narodu. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
The news continues here after the